It was a cold winter night, the kind of night when even stray dogs seek shelter, and the wind bites through every layer of cloth like icy needles. In a quiet alley behind the city's old train station, an old man with trembling hands and a week's back was rummaging through garbage bins, looking for something, anything, that could earn him a warm meal. His name was Old Dahe. No family, no home, just a worn-out cart, a pair of patched-up shoes, and a heart still beating with quiet kindness. As he reached for an empty plastic bottle, something caught his ear. A sound, faint, soft, almost like a kitten. But it wasn't. It was a baby, wrapped in a thin cloth, lying helplessly between two trash bags. Her tiny hands clenched, and her lips blue from the cold. The old man froze for a moment. Was he imagining it? But no. She cried again, weakly, desperately. He looked around. No. 1. The streets were silent. Whoever had left her there was long gone. Dahi didn't think twice. He scooped the baby into his arms and tucked her inside his old coat. Her body was icy, but she was alive. As he held her close to his chest, he whispered gently, "Don't cry, little one. I may have nothing, but I won't leave you." And just like that, his life changed forever. He named her Shinshin, which meant hope. For a man who had nothing left to live for, she became his reason. He sold more junk, collected more bottles, and even went hungry on some days, just to buy her a bowl of milk. People in the neighborhood laughed at him. "An old beggar raising a baby, you'll both starve." But Dahi didn't care. He cleaned her with water from public taps, wrapped her in clothes he stitched from thrown-away fabric, and told her bedtime stories about stars, even if she couldn't understand a word. Years passed. Shinshin grew up in the narrow lanes of the city, barefoot and bright-eyed. She didn't have fancy toys or soft beds, but she had love. Real, raw, unconditional love. Dahi taught her to be kind, to share even when there was barely enough. He taught her to smile even when the world was cruel. And Jinshin, despite her rough start, was different. She was quick to learn, always asking questions, always dreaming. She would sit by the train station and watch travelers go by, wondering where they were headed, what it would feel like to wear nice clothes or sit inside a warm car. She never complained, but her eyes always sparkled with something more: ambition. One rainy afternoon, something strange happened. A woman stepped out of a black car near the alley. She looked rich, dressed in designer clothes, heels clicking sharply against the wet pavement. She stood still for a moment, staring at Shinshin, playing with her chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Then she turned to Dahi. "That child," she said coldly. "Where did you get her?" Dahi frowned. "She's my daughter." "She's not." "She's mine," the woman replied, pulling out a crumpled photo. The baby in the picture. It was Jinshin. In a moment, Dahi's whole world began to shake. It turned out Jinshin had been born into a wealthy family, but had been abandoned the moment her mother died giving birth, and her father realized she wasn't the son he had hoped for. Left like trash on a freezing night, her life should have ended before it even began. But fate had other plans. A poor old man picked her up, gave her a name, gave her a life. Now, after all these years, the rich blood family had found her again. They offered money. "You've done your part, old man. Let her come home. She belongs with us." Dahi didn't budge. She belongs where she is loved. But Shinshin was older now, nearly 18. She had a choice, and she chose to leave. She hugged Dahe tightly and promised, "I'll come back. I'll make you proud. I'll show them that love matters more than blood." Years went by, and true to her word, Xin rose. She studied harder than anyone else. She worked 2 jobs while attending university. She launched a tech startup from a borrowed laptop and turned it into an empire. By the time she was 26, her name was on the front page of every business magazine. Worth billions, smart, fearless, powerful. But she never forgot. Not the alley, not the man who gave her everything. And one day, in front of cameras and flashing lights, she stepped out of a luxury car and walked straight into that same neighborhood where it all began. In her hand was a deed, not just for a house, but an entire building for the homeless. On her wrist was a custom-made watch worth more than most people's savings. But in her heart was the same little girl who once slept under a tin roof beside an old man with tired eyes and an endless heart. She found him. Dahe, now slower, thinner, but still smiling. "I told you I'd come back, didn't I?" she whispered, tears in her eyes. And then, just as he looked up to speak, someone from her past stepped out of the shadows. Someone who had once abandoned her, now returned with new intentions. And just like that, peace turned to chaos again. Who is this person? Why have they come now? And will Xin's hard-earned world collapse? Or rise higher than ever before? Stay with us, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The man who stepped out from the shadows wore a suit that looked expensive, but didn't fit him well. His face had aged, but the eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were the same as the ones Xin saw in the photo all those years ago. It was her biological father, Zhang Chengsheng. For a second, time froze. Xin's heart thumped loudly in her ears. The media behind her didn't know who he was, but Dahe did. His expression hardened instantly. The old wounds that had never fully healed began to ache again. Zhang Chengsheng gave a stiff smile. "Xin, my daughter, you've grown into such a fine young woman. I've been trying to find you for years." Xin didn't move. She didn't even blink. "Years," she repeated quietly. "You left me in a pile of trash. If it weren't for him, I'd be dead." He raised his hands, pretending to be calm. "It was complicated back then. I lost your mother and I didn't know how to cope. I made mistakes." "Mistake?" Dahi's voice shook. Not with fear, but with fury. "You dumped a baby like she was garbage. If I hadn't found her, your mistake would have been a tiny grave." Zhang looked embarrassed for a moment, but quickly changed the subject. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to make things right. I came to offer peace, a father's love." Xin stayed silent. The cameras were still rolling, the reporters whispering to each other. She had spent years building her life, every brick placed with pain, sweat, and stubborn faith. And now, this man was trying to walk in and claim a seat at her table. But it wasn't just about him. Behind Zhang Chengsheng's sudden appearance was something deeper, a motive. A week after the encounter, word got out. Changsheng Industries, his once thriving business, was sinking. Debts were piling up. Investors were pulling out, and Zhang had come to the media, playing the card of a long-lost father, reconnecting with his successful daughter, hoping for a miracle. Her money. It wasn't love. It was survival. Meanwhile, Xin was trying to keep her own company, Daixing Corp, on track. Her team was preparing to launch a new tech product, and the pressure was sky high. But the emotional storm inside her was messing with everything. She started missing meetings, snapping at her assistant, doubting her own choices. Dahe noticed. One evening, while sipping plain soup at their small home, yes, she had built a mansion, but still visited the tiny place they once shared. Dahe quietly asked, What are you really afraid of? Xin looked at him with tired eyes. That I'll turn into him. That all this success, this power, will make me forget who I really am. Dahi smiled. Then remember this. You were raised with nothing but love. That doesn't fade, no matter how shiny the world gets. But things only got worse. Zhang Changsheng started manipulating the media, portraying himself as the victim. I lost my daughter. I just want a second chance. Photos of him wiping fake tears appeared on news sites. Some people began to question Xin. Is she really heartless? Maybe she's too arrogant to forgive. Her company's reputation began to take hits. Shareholders demanded answers. Her competitors started using the drama to their advantage. And in the middle of it all, Dahi quietly fell ill. He never said anything, but Xin noticed. The coughs, the weight loss, the way he struggled to stand. She begged him to see a doctor, but he always waved her off. You've got more important things to do. But nothing was more important. Not to her. One rainy night, as she sat beside his bed, holding his frail hand, he whispered, "Don't let him take away your peace. You've built a beautiful life. Don't let his shadow cover your light." The next morning, Zhang made his move. He showed up at Di Xingcorp's office with lawyers, holding an old birth certificate and legal documents, claiming that as her legal father, he had a right to her assets. His goal wasn't just money now. He wanted control, power. If he couldn't build an empire, he'd take hers. It became a full-blown legal battle. Xingxin's legal team fought back. But the case stirred public attention. Every detail of her childhood, her adoption, her rise from poverty, it all became headlines. Investors grew nervous, stocks dropped, and Xin began to wonder if her entire world, everything she built, was about to come crashing down. But behind all the noise, another story was unfolding. A former employee of Changsheng Industries came forward anonymously. He revealed documents that proved Zhang Changsheng had been involved in unethical practices, fraud, embezzlement, even abandoning assets in poor rural communities. The man had a history of running when things got tough, and now he had run straight into the spotlight, hoping to use his daughter as a shield. Xin had one final decision to make. She could settle, pay him off, make the drama go away, and protect her company. Or she could fight, risk everything, but finally bring the truth out, not just for herself, but for Dahi, for every child who had ever been tossed aside, for every parent who loved with nothing but heart. As the courtroom lights dimmed and her name was called, Xin stood tall. The world was watching, but what happened next would change everything. As Xin stepped into the courtroom, her heart was pounding, but her steps were steady. Cameras clicked outside the building. Reporters whispered updates into their microphones. The world was watching this showdown between a self-made billionaire daughter and the father who had once abandoned her. Everyone wanted to know, would she forgive? Would she fold? Or would she fight back? Inside the courtroom, Zhang Changsheng sat with a smug look, his lawyer whispering last-minute tactics. He looked at Xin like she was a business deal. Something to win, not someone to love. But Xin didn't flinch. She wasn't the scared little girl anymore. She was a woman who had survived storms and built her own sky. The trial began, and both sides laid out their claims. Zhang's team argued for parental rights, pushing the narrative that he had come back out of love, not greed. But Xin's team stayed calm. When they brought in the former employee who had exposed Zhang's shady past, the mood in the courtroom shifted. The man spoke clearly and without anger. He left entire villages without clean water, abandoned projects, stole from his own workers. He's not here for his daughter. He's here because he ran out of people to exploit. Then came the moment no one expected. Dahi, weak from illness but filled with courage, asked to speak. The judge hesitated, but allowed it. Slowly he walked to the front, supported by Xinxin, and turned to face Zhang. "I never had much," he said. "Not money, not power, just this one girl who cried the night I found her in a pile of trash. I fed her what little I had. I taught her right from wrong, and she gave me back more than I could have dreamed. Not just wealth, respect, love." The entire courtroom was silent. Then he turned to Xinxin, eyes misty. "You don't owe me anything, my child, but the world owes you respect, and no one, not even the man who gave you life, has the right to take that from you." Zhang's face twitched. His confidence cracked. The judge took everything into account, from the emotional testimony to the hard evidence. Within minutes, the verdict was delivered. Zhang had no legal claim to Xinxin's wealth or her company. The case was dismissed. His fraud history would now be investigated separately. As Zhang was escorted out, he tried to make eye contact with Xinxin, but she didn't look back. She simply walked out of the courtroom with Dahai, holding his arm gently. Outside, reporters crowded around. One shouted, "Miss Chow, do you have anything to say?" She paused and said calmly, "Family isn't about blood. It's about love, sacrifice, and who shows up when no one else does. I'm proud of the man who raised me. He's the richest person I've ever known." The news spread like wildfire. Social media was filled with admiration for Xinxin's strength and loyalty. Her company's value bounced back even higher than before. Investors who had backed away now returned, more committed than ever. People around the world shared her story, a story of a poor old man who raised an abandoned baby girl, and how she returned one day, not just with billions, but with a heart full of gratitude. Back home, Dahi rested in his favorite chair, covered in the same warm blanket Xinxin used to sleep under as a child. She sat beside him, holding his hand. "Dad, everything's over now," she whispered. He smiled. "No, my dear. It's just beginning. You're free now, to live, to dream, to be happy." And she was. The journey from the junkyard to a billion-dollar empire wasn't just about success. It was about love that never asked for anything in return, and the power of remembering where you came from. In the end, it wasn't the money that made her rich. It was the man who believed in her when no one else did. And that kind of wealth can never be stolen.